Here we are. Welcome. I'm definitely still in podcast mode. Welcome to the Value Working Group. We're catching up on the very last day of our open review for metrics, for candidate metrics. So that is definitely the focus, just to check out the release, have any last kind of discussion points, and see if there's anything that is actionable immediately versus what we're just gonna roll through for now and revise in a future release. So thanks for joining. How's everyone doing today?
Solid.
Thumbs up from people with cameras. I'm into it. Good. All right. So I think the big topic of this discussion that we started on, that I think we wanted to save more time this meeting to discuss, is SCMS. What is it? How do we feel about the metric as it's going to be re-released, and continue that. But before we dive into that, any other points of discussion that we want to get on and save some time for? I see CHAOSS DNI reflection.
I brought this up in other working groups and the weekly call. I just want to continue to make sure I bring it up in every working group, so everybody.
Yes, love it. Please.
Yep. I feel like all of us have heard the spiel.
Nonetheless, I want to do my due diligence. Then it can be a short spiel in this one. So
no, I think I don't learn something the first time I hear it. I'm not gonna lie. So hearing it a few times sounds healthy. Anything else on people's minds we want to discuss?
What is your cat's name?
My cat's name is Josephine Baker Brender Broberg. Josephine B3.
I see a tail occasionally.
Yeah, I call them shark attacks when she cruises on the bottom half of the screen. She has a very ugly bed right next to my laptop, because otherwise she will insist on sleeping on the laptop during working hours.
Well, that's all I needed.
Yep, you're good. And she's also one of my favorite people on this planet. Cool. All right. Well, let's do the reverse order, since we could talk about SCMS for many years, and the CHAOSS reflection is fresh in our minds. So,
So I just wanted to let everybody know, or remind people, and also provide a chance to ask questions. So we're being given an opportunity from the Ford Foundation to spend the next year reflecting on CHAOSS's own DNI efforts and how we address DNI internally within the project. I think this is going to be really great, because it'll not only be a reflection for ourselves, but I think it'll provide us an opportunity to identify new metrics associated with DNI, as well as provide an opportunity to kind of articulate the work that we did over the last year to help other communities do similar work if they have an interest. So the review would be from an external group of people. I mean, it could be people that have involvement in the CHAOSS project, but also people that can give a more of an external view of how the CHAOSS project runs. And then towards the end, the hope would be that it's a series of recommendations and paths forward by which the CHAOSS community could improve. So organizational change is not easy, so it wouldn't just be a series of things to do, would be my thought. It's not must do A, B, and C, but more of a here's A, B, and C. What are the paths towards accomplishing those, given the way that you work, given the time frame that we have, whatever it might be. So that's it. If anybody has questions.
Question on that. So is that review will be based on the work done by DNI group on their metrics, or it'll be something totally different?
It's the CHAOSS project as a whole. So It would be.
Yeah, but my question was are we going to evaluate those metrics we had developed in DNI and on the whole as a CHAOSS group and see how it stands for, or it's going to be a totally independent review, not tied at all or in certain way with the DNI metrics?
It's not necessarily tied to the DNI group, but if there are metrics that emerge from this process that my thought would be is that they would be most sensibly placed or worked on in the DNI group. I could actually see some of the metrics, if there are metrics that emerge, landing here, particularly as we've done work to kind of rethink the focus areas. So I had only said DNI, just that seemed like the most sensible place that the work may occur, the metrics work may occur, but I think it could occur here as well.
Yeah, it seems like a sensible default. And so one thing that I see more communities taking into account that I was curious if it'd be in scope when talking about DNI, are we also talking about like the diverse attributes of, physical, like physical attributes, mental attributes, like
cognitive and racial diversity, those kinds of things, disabilities? Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
It's like the language of that's always a bit tricky. So thank you. But yeah, I was just wondering like what is in scope, out of scope? Because
I think I would hope that what you describe is very much in scope.
Great.
With the recommendations for the community.
Yeah, and for metrics, and for attributes about people that aren't easily discerned from like a picture on GitHub, like how are we going to capture those?
I think this would be the discussion with the advisory group.
Okay.
This is
cool.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm pre-advising, I guess. But yeah, I am always curious about that. Like this relates to my day job as well as like it's very lossy to just base it off of a Twitter profile when trying to capture it.
Totally agreed. So,
yeah.
What were you going to say, Sean?
I was going to say, I think this group tends to, software developers in general tend to be non-neurotypical. So,
yeah.
So I mean, but yeah.
I think the goal, Matt, is that the advisory group, I mean, these are folks that do this type of reflection for a living.
Yeah.
And so they're skilled in not only taking a look at how communities or organizations function, but also skilled in across all the attributes that you mentioned, but also skilled in saying, here's what we see, and here are very sensible paths forward for your community that could be applied in a very reasonable and approachable way. So I think that's the goal of the advisory group here.
Cool.
Yep.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm super excited, and I think my questions lead to where I'm already at, which is like I want to learn how to do this better. Like I want to see it in action. So that's really exciting.
Cool.
Good. All right, well, let's hop right in. So we've talked about the social currency metric system more than a few times. I copied the notes from our last discussion last week, which I think I could summarize by saying that we're acknowledging that there are a number of possibly discrete or atomic metrics, depending on the terminology we choose to adopt, that are distinct in there, and that this is sort of a composite metric or even strategic approach to analyzing communities that's on its own scale. And just wanted to take some time to reflect on how are people feeling about that as from the standpoint of CHAOSS overall outside of value, and then when it comes to this specific metric, like as part of our system.
I'll start by saying that I wrote a lot of comments, and I think this metric there's process parts, then there's data collection parts, and there's sort of machine manipulation parts. And I think that this metric, in order to sort of be in a family of standardizable-ish metrics, has to include some kind of shared data set. Because and metadata set. So like a standard codex, I think is important. Does that mean it never changes? No, but I think open source isn't so wildly diverse that there's not some standard set of things that we can define. Can we do it in a day? No. But I think it's super important that because I don't think, like, I can't, like, as a tool builder, I literally can't look at the metric in its current form and build a tool to implement it. Because, and to know that I would be in any way allied with its intention. And that's largely because I think things like the metadata for the codecs, like what are they, and the actual some sample data that we use to say this is how we will apply this codec to real example data in the world. Like without that, I don't think that any tool builder has a chance to build it in a way that's consistent with another tool builder. And so then it's just not the same metric. It's a very custom, almost, it's like the definition of a service instead of a metric.
Yeah, if others like me have not had a chance to go through Sean's comments in the last 3 days, they're really helpful. So first off, thank you for taking the time to be that thorough.
Well, let me apologize for not doing it sooner, because I alluded to the fact that I had like this collection of things. It just took me a long time to think it through, because there was a lot to think through.
And this metric is very different from anything else that we have defined, and maybe it shouldn't be a metric. Maybe we need a different category or different thing for describing what the SCMS does, and then pull out the atomic metrics that you're talking about and define those.
So I'm a little more inclined, this is based on all of the conversation. So this is just everything that I've heard and learned about the SCMS. You're correct. It doesn't fit like the other metrics. It just doesn't. And there's really no way around that in its current form. And I think, go ahead.
I don't think it needs
to. I think it might need to.
Okay.
That's well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know the answer to that. Kind of like the stuff that we're asking you and Georg to think about with respect to the community reports. You know how that's an aggregation of many atomic metrics? You know what I mean? Like around issues or pull requests. None of those visuals themselves are listed as metrics. They are a collection of atomic metrics, and there hasn't been a push, say for you, Sean, to get the new contributor graphs that you've been showing in as a new metric. There hasn't been a push for you to do that, which is fine because that's different. So maybe to Georg's point, maybe a different category. I have more comments, but I'll stop there. So I don't know what other people think. Elizabeth, I saw you went unmuted too.
The new contributor stuff, I stopped until the release because we're not making any changes till after the release. I didn't want to confuse.
Gotcha.
But we have that. That's in our standard report release.
The only comment I was going to make is that I think with value and maybe diversity inclusion as well, there are a lot more gray areas. Like it's super easy to do activity. Like that's pretty clear and pretty low hanging fruit, essentially, because it's like pretty black and white. Either someone comments or they don't. But I think with value and maybe D&I as well, there are some gray areas. So I think we need to maybe just decide if we're okay with having a metric that looks different because of the nature of what we're trying to measure, or if we want to try to like force it into this like cookie cutter thing that we've set up for other easier black and white areas, which I don't know what the right answer is. I think we need to just decide as a group how we feel about that and if that's okay. Because I think we may run into some of the same issues with D&I, especially as the advisory group comes on board and starts, really doing a deep dive. It's not just a matter of, okay, how many white people are on your team? It's like a little bit deeper than that, and things that might not be so easy to just cookie cutter measure, round peg in a square hole thing. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I would definitely be I'd like to be really specific about like what doesn't work about it if something doesn't work. Like, and I'll show my hand that like this metric has always been a challenge for me to wrap my head around. But it's not because it looks differently. It's because there's no clear measurement as somebody who hasn't done it many times. Like I look at there's a ton of strategy. There's some recommendations on like approaches. There's recommendations on what data to gather. But I guess I do think like, is it implementable based on like an understanding of what we're trying to achieve and what data we're gathering? Like, is a good baseline for this, in my opinion, for the entire CHAOSS project. Like, can I implement this? And if it's, yeah, I think I'll stop there. Like, I don't know if I could implement this in any way.
I have a suggestion. It just came to me.
Okay.
Which is what I broke it down. Like I literally am referencing specific parts of the metric in its current form in each of my comments. And what if some version of those critiques were released as markdown footnotes, like almost like an annotated candidate metric or an annotated metric where this is something that we want to get to, and here's a set of questions or considerations or concerns about it that the community has expressed. I don't know if it'd be exactly the wording that I chose, but maybe something like that where, like, we recognize there are these challenges with it as a CHAOSS metric, but we don't want to not, I don't know, it would still be a different thing. Like maybe it is a different thing, but annotating it and saying, you know, we're taking a really big jump here, and we're trying to come up with something that we think people will find useful. And in the context of CHAOSS, here are the annotated questions about it that we are continuing to develop for a future release or consider or question, because I don't think anyone that goes to try to implement the metric in its current form is going to have questions that are like astonishingly different from the ones I posed.
So I think we have, I really like that approach, annotating the metric and releasing it with those annotations. And then we have the unique opportunity right now to learn more about what this metric is and how it works, because we're actually piloting it with Elizabeth.
Yes, exactly.
And so we will learn a lot more about it over the next couple of weeks. And then we can probably with more knowledge, speak to how to refactor it.
I think that's a very fair statement. Yeah. So maybe we want to just delay this one or something. I don't know.
I think, well, I could put together a pull request where I put in markdown footnotes with pieces of the annotations that I made. And we could say something like, this metric's in release because we're reaching for it. It's different than our other metrics. And it raised, you know, a specific set of questions because it's so different. And we've annotated these questions, but we want to share it with the community. So it's like, don't release it or annotate it, and just kind of like let the development of what it becomes be sort of a transparent process, so that somebody that hits the chaos.community/metric site and clicks on this metric doesn't see a metric that that looks so different they can't grok it, but they see a proposed ambitious synthetic metric that the community is actively discussing specifics about. That it's I don't know, can a metric be released, be very different, but be something that is also a work in progress.
Is there any, I love that idea. I started to list out like the options that we have. So, I mean, and this is how I think through everything. So I thought about like changing my last name while getting married. Like just list out all of them. Don't have to have like a right answer up front. You just list them out. So like reject as a candidate, accept with annotation, accept as is. And like, are there one other that came to mind that I don't know if we have a system for is like do we have like a CNCF style maturity model of like incubating an idea to graduating and releasing it? Okay. Because like as I think more about like these, I'd say I'd almost put this in a category of an applied metric, which like I guess I use applied as a very nice word for like, this is, you're going to get into the real world shit of things and it's going to be messy. um, I kind of like that as a term, but anyway, that term or not, like as this kind of big gnarly applied metric, like isn't just like in or out, it's like maturing as we approach it. Because I think there is so much knowledge and expertise in here. But we're not, I think that, yeah, the implementer will need some more of that experience through examples, through use cases, before they can get to the same conclusions.
Matt,
Anyway, a lot of ideas.
I like the idea of incubating, but also making note that this is real different than other metrics, like making that highly visible so that the newcomer doesn't hit this and go, what?
So I have a comment based on the conversations here. So one, just as a small note, the SCMS, it does actually have system in the title. So not metric, it's a system, to be fair. The badging program is a way to bring together D&I metrics in a meaningful way that can have an impact in the world. The community reports are a way to bring together atomic metrics that can have an impact in a meaningful way in the world. The SCMS is not too dissimilar to me, that it's a way to bring together metrics in a way that can have an impact in the world. So we do have precedent for other systems that we're working on in the CHAOSS project that bring together metrics to make an impact.
How do we represent those on our website?
We don't really at the moment. So we only represent the atomic metrics that are used to comprise those two other systems, two other programs, the badging program and the health report program.
So instead
Got
of
3 programs now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like instead of calling it or thinking it in terms of metric, can we think it in terms of program like DNA badging program or social currency metric system program, so that it can be inclusive of many metrics?
So I want to follow a thread that you started, Matt G, of would you say, like, would a possibly desired outcome be that SCMS not be categorized as a metric, but be added as like one of the types of health reports we run? Would that be?
Or one of the types of programs that we support within the CHAOSS project.
I think it is its own program.
And the way that, say, Elizabeth was talking, as we do a deployment internally, we're going to learn about the system, the social currency metric system, not dissimilarly to the way that we've been running the pilot tests on the badging program, to learn about how we can effectively bring these things together to have a positive impact in the world. And honestly, not too dissimilar than I suspect what we're going to do with the community reports. I would suspect that the 4 visuals, that 2 from KORG or 2 from Grimoire Lab, 2 from, those will probably change over time as we learn the lay of the land a little bit. So maybe this falls more into that category. And it moves out of the metrics and into a program that is supported, kind of originating here in the value working group, because the D&I badging program is clearly originating in the D&I working group. This is a program that the value working group is working on to bring forward. I'm not sure where the community reports originate from, but maybe evolution or risk, kind of a combination of a couple different working groups.
I like the direction. It's almost upgrading the social currency metric system. It's not discounting the work that Benya and Dylan and we all have put into it, but it's taking it to the next level. And so thinking about the steps that would be involved in that, there are if we take it right now and just call the program, then it would not be based on any of the metrics we currently have. So I think we should go through that exercise that Sean was talking about of identifying those atomic metrics and defining those so that we have that foundation.
I do think I identified, I don't think I got them, maybe I didn't get them all or name them all, but I did, where I saw something I thought was an atomic metric, I named it in the course of my comments, and then I came up with somewhere between 8 and 10. And some of them are process metrics, very similar to D&I, and there's at least 6 metrics that are atomic metrics in the ordinary, well, called the ordinary atomic metric definition. And I think there's the new question of shared common metadata and common trained data that are it could be part of the program. Like the program leaders could direct it differently. In its current form, that was my thought.
So one of the constraints we have is that our review period is ending tomorrow, and we have SCMS already released. So I would like it to be in this release, and then we can take the next period to build it out as a program, define those atomic metrics, and then follow the train of thought that we started here and implement that.
I like that plan. Others have thoughts, feelings?
I think some form of the comments that I made inserted as footnoted annotations will help people who are who hit this as a released metric see what's different about it. And I think Matt's suggestion of putting some kind of incubating tag on it and recognizing in the metric header that it's a synthetic metric, that it's different than the other metrics that we have, is important. And I'm only thinking from a newcomer's perspective, because when you go through the list of metrics we've released and this one, it's just real different. And saying that we recognize that helps people not be sort of confused by what they see when they hit this metric. That's my main concern, is if I hit this metric and there is no such annotation about it being incubating and synthetic, or whatever word we want to use, then it's so different. I don't know. I'm very confused about what CHAOSS thinks a metric is.
Yeah, that would be my concern as well, is when we release a metric, we're saying this is solid and it's vetted and we've, it's pretty tight. And this one is still a little bit gray because we're still in the process of, doing the pilot. And so we're not sure like maybe what the end result is that we actually present to the community, if it does look different than what we have right now. So that would be my only concern, is that if we do release it as it is, and even with the annotations, that it's still maybe not quite ready to be released to the world. But that's just my opinion. So
we have released
it in January.
Yeah, it was an interim release. Yeah, it was one that went through the interim release process.
Yeah, that's one of the complexities that we've been dancing around, for sure. That might not have been clear this conversation or recently. That it's already released by definition, but I think it's very fair to admit that like it doesn't make sense that it was released as is. Like it.
Yeah, I mean, are people using it? Like who?
Yeah, Liturgius or GrimoireLab is building it. That's where kind of my annotation suggestion came in, and Matt's incubation designation and some kind of, I don't know, some way of recognizing on our site that it's different than other things we're doing, but not unreleasing a metric, which I've said we shouldn't do before. So.
Well, but I think it's, unless maybe people think differently, but I could see in the course of 6 months that SCMS is no longer listed as a metric, and that it's a program that we run. The way that DNI badging is not listed as a metric, and the community reports are not listed as a metric. So that was at least what was in my mind. Maybe other people saw it differently. That my vision was in 6 months, it's not listed as a metric. The atomic components are metrics. That in 6 months we create metrics from the 8 to 10 that Sean identified. At the atomic level, whatever the number might be. But SCMS as a term is no longer a metric, it's a program.
Right. And Sean, are you considering like what sort of breaking change that is to user experience, and we need to work around that?
When like the unreleased, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Like I know you've been conscious of not removing a release metric. So my thought was like, are you concerned with like it being a breaking change, like an API?
I think Grimoire Lab's commitment to building it is what we break if we unrelease it entirely, or don't at the same time as we unrelease it recognize it as a program. That it's not fair to the effort that Grimoire Labs put into realizing it to like take it off our site and not have it be a thing. That's the breaking part, I think.
Sure. So is it fair to say like we have a dependency on making sure these programs are represented on the website at the same time if we are removing the metric, like that there is some place for this to live?
I think it's important, because otherwise it looks like Grimoire Labs like off on their own, and it's just not fair, because I build metrics when they're developed because I feel I can trust that they will continue to exist and it's worth developer effort. And this is the same kind of problem.
Right. So I hate to say we need more things on the web page, but it would be something like, here's the programs button, and the programs button describes the 3 programs. And we would say, these are the programs that are built, bringing together metrics in a meaningful way in the unique areas of interest that people may have with respect to, like we have a narrative at the top, and we'd say program 1, badging program, program 2, SCMS, program 3, community health reports. Like we're bringing these things together in ways that's not just atomic. But then to Sean and your point, Matt, that before we just remove SCMS, we probably want to have that program page. Like as soon as we click the remove button, we click the add button, and it gracefully moves so that the efforts of Benya and Dylan and Grimoire Lab, I think Ria is the student who's working on it. We're not just like, actually, never mind.
I would say, like under metrics, looking at the web page design, I can't screen share. Can we screen share for just a second?
Sure.
I mean, we have to do it anyway for the community reports. Like that was already going to have to be a discussion. So
like
I don't
metrics,
think it's...
So like under metrics, we can have current release and release notes. I don't know why we need, but we could have metrics programs.
Yeah.
And that could take you to a page with each of our metrics programs, which are DNI badging, community reports, and SCMS.
And the current release can be renamed to metric definitions.
Let me see what I get when I get to current release.
Yep.
It's the standard metrics page.
Upcoming release. So do we have any access to previous releases?
When you go to the
bottom
release notes,
release notes are separate.
That's where you find PDF versions of the previous releases.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think then I wonder if current release and release history, or metrics release and metrics history are better titles here, because release notes isn't clear to me that I'm going to see the history, and then metrics programs.
I'll create an issue on the website repo to capture
Perfect.
this.
Thanks, Georg.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we have the technology. We can get this done. Yeah.
For whatever, when you said that, I immediately thought of the $6 Million Man.
It's 100% the reference. Yeah. Yeah. That is.
To rebuild it better, stronger, faster.
Yes, that's right.
we just don't want to spend a lot of money. Yeah.
I'm a lifetime member of the Lee Majors fan club, by the way.
Oh, very nice.
Because he was the person I wrote to in 5th grade when we had to write to a famous person.
That's great. Okay, so just want to make sure we've captured everything. That the main takeaway at the moment, we'll continue down the path of SCMS as a release metric. Sean is going to open a PR with some reasonably minor annotations.
I'm going to make a lightweight version, perhaps, of my existing annotations.
Cool.
Which are, I would not say lightweight.
No, God, no. They're the opposite. They're heavy. Brilliant, but heavy. Okay, so you'll follow up on that.
Yep.
And then we'll be all right to release. And then our goal by the next release cycle is include our programs listed on the site under metrics, release. So we're going to brainstorm and then release the atomic metrics that we've discovered from SCMS because they're super valuable and interesting. We'll remove SCMS as a metric, add a redirect to the program page.
Yeah, I think it'd be better to leave the link there and add a redirect to the program page.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want my PR to include anything like the words incubating or synthetic metric? So yeah, only have to do one.
That's a great point, Sean. I think we're learning a lot of vocabulary that I think we're playing with, but we haven't decided on. So
okay. I'll leave that out.
Yeah, you could say like this metric is made up of other metrics that we are identifying, or that we're actively identifying, but maybe like not choose the exact term we're using yet, and just.
Okay.
We're not gonna. I think just a proper description of what's going on here, Sean, on your annotations, because any term like incubation is going to become kind of a moot point as this moves into a program.
Right. Yep. Right. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. I think there's a continued conversation that we are starting to colloquially use certain language to describe like what is a metric that fits in the program, fits in CHAOSS as a project versus what is a healthy program. That will be really fun to explore, and I'm kind of adding as let's say a stretch goal for next release is to consider like how do we capture that from like the CHAOSS level down so that and get a conversation across working groups and like does this resonate with you as well, because it's been really helpful for us to identify like to try to say atomic and synthetic.
Yeah, but you're right, we haven't agreed on terms, and I think just throwing a new term out there probably wouldn't be more helpful than it might be even less helpful.
Yeah,
we've never discussed it, but I do like the term incubating long term in the discussion only because the CNCF uses it and other large Linux enterprises use it, but we can't decide that today.
Definitely not. Yeah, no, but I like it too, and it just kind of implies our own maturing of like how we're seeing the working groups rolling up and being responsible for advising the reader, like where are you in the process? Like we want to be very accepting of a lot of ideas, which means maybe like having descriptors of like what's something that's still pretty nascent versus something that's really hardened, or whatever metaphor we want to use.
I really like the idea of programs just because they carry practices or processes associated with them. The community report does, DNI badging does. They have a workflow to them.
Yeah.
And SCMS does as well, which I think was one of the challenges as a metric, that it actually has a process component where the others really kind of don't. I mean, not in the sense that SCMS does. So.
No, but I'm very appreciative that we've taken the time to explore it, because I think SCMS feels like discovering like the Magna Carta or something, or I mean Rosetta Stone style action here of just like there's a ton of knowledge here and we need to translate it to make it make sense. Yeah, so it's been archaeological in some ways.
And for me, it was so big. It's taken me a long time to really understand it.
Yeah, there's no shame in taking time on that. It's for sure. Good all, and we kind of ended right on time. Thank you for these thoughts. Any other actions that we need to take before we miss it?
No, I think that was super productive.
Cool. Same.
Really great.
Appreciate everyone weighing in and being open to the big and new ideas. Love it. Great to see you all. Happy whatever day of whatever month it is. Please take care of yourselves. And yeah. Talk soon.
Be well.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.